Okay, put it up. And that just resets me a little bit and it's easier for me to stop.
Here, what noise do potatoes make?
Hello, welcome to the channel. My name is Cassandra and this is where I talk about my life experiences and lessons learned to try and help other people who might be in similar situations. If that sounds interesting to you, then go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. In this video, I'm going to be sharing 3 tips to tackle trichotillomania or hair pulling. Now, this is something that I have personally struggled with for a very long time, over 20 years. It has gotten better, definitely, but it is still something that I struggle with. And a few weeks ago, I had like another bad phase where I was really pulling a lot more frequently, which it doesn't feel good mentally, you know, it's not something that you want to be doing. So although it is still something that I struggle with myself, it's still not something that I've been able to eradicate. There are a couple of things that I do to try and lessen the severity, let's say, or to sort of recenter and calm myself down in those particularly difficult times. So the first tip I have is to tackle your triggers. Being aware of what makes you pull more often or pick more often, this applies to body picking as well, that can really help you to notice when you're doing it, make the conscious choice to stop, or to sort of be a bit nicer to yourself and not be like, oh, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? You know that, like, okay, that happened, so that makes sense, not ideal, but okay. So for me and for a lot of people, the main trigger is stress or anxiety. One of the least helpful things that people say to me is, just relax, just don't worry. Like, if I could just relax or just not worry, I would have a lot fewer problems, okay? That's not something that's so simple to do. But again, you know, when you're in those moments where you are really stressed or really anxious, you can just recognize, like, okay, that makes sense because I have this situation going on that's making me stressed or anxious. This makes sense, like, just, it's not great, but it's happening, it is what it is. And then I feel like that just frees up space in your mind to be just, again, kinder to yourself and just think about this thing that's stressing you out and maybe either try and find ways to solve whatever thing that is, or to even take your mind off of that thing. The second major trigger for me, I don't know if this is a common one, but for me, having clean hair is a very consistent trigger for me. So after I wash my hair, I always find myself reaching to pull more, and the reason for that is to do with the sort of tactile sensation. So when the hair is really clean, it leaves less residue on my fingers, which sort of means that I'm not discouraged to stop because my fingers have like gunk on them, if that makes sense. Also, my hair is very naturally straight, annoyingly straight. So when I've just dried my hair straight, it's easier for me to feel the texture of the hair and those little like crinkles or inconsistencies. And you know, trichotillomania for me is also a stimming behaviour. So to get those little crinkles and wrinkles and really be able to feel them in a more crisp, clear way. And there's a part of my brain that finds that satisfying. I wish that it didn't, but it does. So again, I'm more likely to do that when the hair is really clean and straight. The reason why it's good for me to know that is because instead of washing my hair fully more regularly, I will utilise things like dry shampoo more, because although it does take away the oils from the hair and make the hair look better and fresher, it still does have a little bit of texture in the fingers, a little bit of residue when you play with it. So again, once the fingers get dirty or gunky, that does discourage me from continuing. And also regarding the sort of style, the straightness of my hair, what always seems to help me is when I curl my hair, because again, then you're almost creating more bends than what is usually in my hair, so that when the hair is really straight, I'm like, oh, that's a crinkle that's in my hair. That's like a texture that is in my hair. But when I've curled my hair, I can be like, oh, well, it just feels that way because of the curling iron, or it just feels that way because of the way it put it through the straighteners. And I have no idea why, but for some reason, when the hair is artificially textured, I don't want to touch it. But when it's like naturally textured, that's what I'm drawn to. So curling my hair always consistently helps with that. but it's also a lot more time and effort, and then it damages the hair. So I really like the way that curly and waved hair looks on me. I think it's much nicer, but that's why I don't do it that often. Tip number 2 for tackling trichotillomania is to substitute the stimulation. So again, I talked about how for me, a lot of it is to do with the tactility. There is also a bit of that sensation with the scalp. So there's sort of those 2 points of stimulation that I want to try and substitute. So for the tactility on the fingers, there are 2 fidget toys or stim toys that I like to use the most. The first one is this sort of like pop ball. This one is nice just to keep my hands busy, and I can use that either one-handed or two-handed, and this is very nice. And the second one I like to use is this sort of like puffer ball, spike ball type thing. Obviously the 2 are quite different in size, but the reason why this one can be quite nice is that it does have these little spiky bits that come out, and that does simulate both like the strand of the hair and the pulling part of it. Now initially when I was thinking of getting this, or when I got it, I wasn't that convinced that it was going to simulate or emulate that sensation as well, because you know, hair is sort of smooth and less porous, whereas this is a lot more rubbery and a little bit more sticky. But actually it works really well for me in terms of simulating or emulating that sort of tactility. I did look at some other ones that are kind of like string based, but I don't know, they just weren't that nice. I didn't like them. I do kind of like the elastic quality of this as well. This is quite nice. I do actually have 2 review videos going into a bit more detail about those particular fidget toys or stim toys. I'll put a link to those in the description down below so you can watch them after this video. Now, what about the stimulation or the sensation on the scalp end of things? For that, a little head massager, head spider thing can be quite nice. To be honest, I often forget about this one. One, because I have a thing where if something has a box, I always tend to put it back in the box. But when things aren't in the box, out of sight, out of mind, I forget about them. I think it's like the autism wants me to put it in the box and the ADHD wants me to see it. But anyway, so this one, you just sort of like, put it in your scalp. Even if you don't have trichotillomania, there's just like, it just feels good, you know, it's just like a nice sensation. However, a downside to this, I mean, it looks a bit weird if you do it in a meeting, right? But also, I mean, you can see, because you know, the tool itself is quite large and you need to lift it up in your head. My arm does get tired pretty easily. If you have someone around you who is kind enough and sweet enough to do it for you, that's great. But yeah, this kind of puts me off it a little bit. To be honest, the tactile stimulation in the fingers is usually the one that I need to substitute more than the scalp one. It just depends, you know, if you have trichotillomania or body picking tendencies yourself, which I'm guessing you do if you're watching this video, you'll maybe know that like sometimes it just depends on the time, it just depends on the state of mind that you're in, or how severe that particular phase of picking is, where just like a different type of stim will help you more in different situations, and that's why I like to have all 3 of these available to me. Just a quick note as well that this is not a sponsored video or anything like that, but I will just put links in the description down below to these 3 stims, the exact ones that I have, in case you want to get them as well. And the third and final tip I have for you for tackling trichotillomania is to create constraints. I find that when my hair is up, either in a pony or in a bun or completely put up with a clip, I mean, it's up, right? So the strands aren't free and available, and that's probably my best stopper, my best constraint, to just be like, I'm not touching it anymore. Obviously it's not foolproof because you can still take out the clip or the bobble, the hair tie or whatever, but it's consistently a good way. Like if I keep picking and I keep like trying not to, but it's just not happening, then okay, put it up. And that just resets me a little bit and it's easier for me to stop. The downside to that though is, you know, I do have sensory processing issues. So to have the hair pulled back very tightly, or even not that tightly, but obviously tightly enough that it stays up, but for a long period of time, that, I don't know if irritates my scalp is the right word, but it frustrates my scalp, it wears it down, it makes my scalp tired. So I can't do that all the time. So a good thing that I've actually started doing very recently, which does actually help as well, is to take some big clips. And what I do is I don't have a clip to hand, I'm not prepared. But what I do is I kind of like push the hair back a little bit like that, clip it here, and the same thing on this side, push the hair back, clip it here. And because then you have these clips that are sort of like, not styled, but you know, kind of like in a very deliberate way, if I was to pull on the hair here, then it would like mess up the bit that's in the clip, and that would like feel messy and feel horrible. Then I would have to like brush it and redo it again. And then even at the back, because that's where I tend to pick the most, I don't know why, but then even at the back where the clips aren't touching at all, it still just stops me from doing it. The clips I use are very large as well, so maybe it's just this thing of like reaching my hands around without touching the clips. But that's also a good option for me to create that constraint, to create that barrier without irritating or annoying my scalp. So the 3 tips for tackling trichotillomania are to tackle your triggers, substitute the stimulation, and to create constraints. I hope you found that helpful. If you have any other ideas or suggestions as to how to tackle trichotillomania, especially at night time where you're maybe very tired or half asleep, let me know in the comments down below. If you found it helpful, like it, share it with someone who might also find it useful, and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!